Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner and operator of Something Wicked events and all that other good stuff that we do. I kind of forget sometimes. And welcome to this podcast. Now, just so that you know, this is our regular podcast that is delivered to you once a week on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. to your favorite podcast app, YouTube, and Spotify. So make sure you check out the show on all that good stuff. But other than that, if you are listening to the podcast for the very first time, this is a podcast in which we delve deep into all kinds of horror from different decades, subgenres, and everything like that. This year, we're hoping to touch base on a lot of different genres and decades that we didn't do last year, only because we had a great amount of response in regards to some of the classic films that kind of get overlooked. So one of the films that we're going to be doing, the film that we're doing today, because we only focus on one film per episode, is one that I think has been overlooked, and which is why we're bringing this all up. To talk about the film that we're about to speak about is my special guest, Sarah Panazzo. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us for the show this week.
Oh, hello.
And we are speaking about the monster horror film Splinter. A lot of people don't even know this film exists. It kind of came and went without any real big fanfare. We're hoping that it will get a lot more of a cult audience as time goes on, but it is a film in which has a lot of great things about it, and we hope to discuss those in order to get you out there to go check it out. So, Panazzo, as we like to start off some of these episodes with, what was your first experience with watching this film? And you can add any type of plot in it that you like, because I know there are a lot of people who have not seen this film.
So I'm not sure if I saw this one in theaters. I think I did, because I remember a lot of other stuff that came out that year. But I know that I still to this day get this one and Slither confused because their titles are so close and they came out close to the same time. But it is a really gross creature feature with some really good effects. Shea Wiggum is fantastic, as always. He's now in like everything, which I'm happy about. But yeah, this movie was very disgusting. I think it was one of the earlier like severe body horrors between the splinters themselves and the way the bodies move throughout the entire movie. It's just very, very gross.
All right, so for you out there who are listening to this and may have never seen the movie Splinter, it's essentially, and we'll go through a lot of the plot as we talk, but it's essentially about a young couple celebrating an anniversary who want to see the stars at night. Now, neither one of these two, and their names are, what were their names again? Polly and Seth, are camping people, but they're going to do it anyways. Unfortunately, their camping tent fiasco does not go as planned, and they decide to get in the car and drive to a hotel and, celebrate that way. But they come across another couple who are actually fleeing the state. Now, we don't know the reason why when it starts off, but they're some type of criminals because Shea, what's his last name again?
Shea Wiggum.
Wiggum is has a gun, and he threatens or carjacks the couple. Now, they come across some other things that leads their car to be damaged, and they have to stop at the gas station, which is where the rest of the entire movie takes place at. They get stuck at this gas station because this moth type creature that no one has ever seen before has taken over some dead bodies and augment them and change them and made it really hard for them to leave the gas station. Now, if you've ever seen the movie John Carpenter's The Thing, or even the aquatic horror film Leviathan, you'll get an idea of the type of monster this is. It's ever-changing, ever-evolving. It's taking body parts from other people and stitching them together.
The individual body parts are active. There's the whole hand puppet thing. And I know that a lot of this was practical. I think there was one CGI monster, and that's because it hits a windshield or jumps into the windshield. But the rest of it is all puppeteering and practical effects, which is really gross. I know they used a couple of like gymnasts and contortionists and stuff like that to bend the bodies in certain ways because it is truly awful in certain parts. Watching like arms bend backwards, legs bend backwards. I mean, it's disgusting.
Well, that's why I make really good reference to those two movies because The Thing obviously is probably the film that most people will associate with it.
Yes, absolutely.
Leviathan is not as well loved as I would love people to love it. But it's a very similar type of situation where body parts get changed and augmented based on the moss that takes these people over. And it's really cool the way the moss is actually depicted as these splinters or shards that stick out of every orifice in the blood as it's they call it the blood that it goes after or feeds on.
Yeah,
So,
it was really interesting the first time I watched this, and even watching this again, I always think like, is it a demonic porcupine? Because these splinters are just everywhere and they're just always breathing. But then the scenes where they show the splinters themselves like feeding on the blood and just being absolutely disgusting. It like excretes its own like black oily substance that gets on everything. So throughout the entire movie, you're not even just dealing with these disgusting creatures, but you're dealing with this like black slime that's covering everything, and you're watching people slowly be infected through their bloodstreams, and the splinters that are just sprouting out everywhere and sticking out of tires and arms and everything else. It's not for people who don't like being impaled, even by splinters.
It's not, and and I will say that if you've seen John Carpenter's The Thing, and you didn't like that, you're definitely not going to like what's in here because it goes even further. Because in The Thing, they mimic bodies and body parts. In this one, it rips them apart and makes whole new creatures and things. And thankfully, you don't always get a great shot or idea of what the new creature is.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love that they mention in the movie itself is that so the one guy is a biologist, and so he's always comparing it to trees and ever-growing flora, fauna, whatever. So at one point he's like, it's almost like roots are reaching towards water or sun, except these are body parts reaching, so it doesn't know how to correctly use the body. It is just trying to get it to that spot in the fastest way possible, which, as people know with the human body, is not the best thing ever.
No, that's a great point to make because that's what makes when it's reaching out makes some of those sequences really disturbing, especially when you have the sequence with just a few fingers trying to figure out where all the blood is, and then later on when you have the whole hand, it's that. There are some disturbing instances in there, but to ground it all as this, this couple and Shea Wiggum as this, I guess, criminal or former criminal, because in theory, he's actually trying to do good.
Yeah, because they never really explain. It looked like they had like the prison jumpsuits in the back of their truck, but I couldn't figure out if they had escaped or if they were just like on the run again before they were caught, because it sounded like later in the movie that he was released at some point and he was on his way out. But then at the same time, they were being chased down already. So I don't know if they like did something else and he was being hunted down again, or if they had actually escaped from prison. They never really clarify.
No, and I got lost on that too. I never noticed that until this time I watched. I was like, wait a second. He does seem like he did his time, got out, and the first thing he wanted to do was repay the victim of his crime and then make his way up north. Or make his way down to Mexico. That makes no sense that they're chasing after him, that he's actually on the run. And I didn't get that either the second time. I was like, wait, is this a screw up that we just didn't get because there was a cut somewhere or some
I don't know. I feel like maybe, I know that this director was more of a special effects artist and had done quite a bit of work there. So I think it's like how Frank Grillo now has gone from stunt actor to creating movies for stunt people. I think it was kind of that thing of, I've done enough special effects stuff, I want to make a movie based on what I am interested in, which the special effects in this are fantastic. The writing's a bit weak, but it is disgusting and gruesome. And I mean, the creature, especially with the backwards head from the girlfriend, where it's like just pulling all the bodies together, is just absolutely brutal.
So, yeah. And so what happens for everyone out there is that these three people are stuck in this gas station. Now, the creature is not strong enough to break through the windows, which is kind of funny. But but the idea that they're stuck in the gas station reminds me of other type of closed films or single location films where the terror is outside and these people are stuck inside. Now, it doesn't bring back memories of such, cabin in the woods type movies necessarily, because it's a gas station and it's brightly lit the entire time. And you have lots of different, I guess, modes and visual motifs in the film that make it much more interesting. Like when they decide to go into the freezer section because they realize that temperature is the way that this creature can find its prey or the blood from other creatures. That right there is a very interesting sequence because first time they do it, I gotta get Shea Wiggum's character's name. Wiggum's character is the first one to go.
Dennis.
Because Dennis has been infected by this creature. It's slowly taking over his one of his arms.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I didn't get is he's got the little splinter and you can see it spreading up his arm. And maybe it's just because it hasn't like quite made it to the blood yet, but like with his girlfriend, it's like instantaneous, like she turns like within minutes, whereas he's going the entire movie with this splinter that slowly is taking over. So I was like, there are no rules with this.
Yeah, well, that and the fact that with his splinter, he actually he gets it from the tire and he pulls it out. So he's got whatever residual stuff came from that. Whereas his girlfriend was actually attacked by this creature. And it does, you're right, that for her, it is fast. It's not nearly as fast as, say, the gas station attendant, who's the first victim in the movie.
Or even the cop who shows up.
The cop. Yeah, so more people get added to, or I say more people, one person gets added to this chaos, which is a cop who's after Dennis's character, or Dennis, because, like I said, he has some type of warrant out for his arrest, and they think he's some really, really dangerous escapee, which never really...
Yeah, to the point that, like, they imply that all the state troopers in the state of Oklahoma know who he is, but these regular people on the side of the road have no idea.
Yeah, and until this viewing, I didn't really give it much. I hadn't given it much thought until I was watching it. I was like, I don't really get that, but I'm gonna just go with it because there are some things in this movie that now irks me because I just don't understand some of the logic behind it. But as a monster film fan, I really, really love the monster, and I think that overshadowed a lot of my my enjoyment of the first few times I've seen the film, because the actors are really strong in this film. It's a monster film, and the actors are really strong. And for the most part, it starts and it never lets up. Like,
correct.
It just never lets up. It may let up for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden they need to like cut somebody's arm off, or they're battling another section of the monster that has broken off and is trying to rejoin with the rest of it.
Yeah.
Because like there's so much that can go wrong with this movie, which is, there's a lot of thinking, but a lot of non-thinking. Like they're like, oh, well, let's beat it. And then it like comes back to life. And they're like, okay, well, that's a thing. And so they start hitting it to separate it. And then it's all the individual separated pieces coming at it. And they still keep doing this over and over again. Like, well, if we keep separating it, maybe it'll die eventually. And it's like, it hasn't the first like 3 times it's done it. Maybe we should stop with this decision.
It takes them a while to realize that fire is the only way
Oh
to,
my gosh.
and that's the easy thing because it's attracted to the fire. So
Well, and that was another one of my big problems is they were like, yeah, we've got to cool down his body temperature and almost have him die so that he can go and get the car that may or may not have the keys, which they don't think about. And I'm like, the entire time there's this giant sign in the background that says fireworks. And like before they tried to light the woods on fire and a bunch of other stuff. And it's like, how about you light a fire? Because I'm pretty sure that's warmer than the temperature outside.
well, yeah, I kind of got that too. I was like, oh yeah, why did they light a fire? And we could have bypassed the whole temperature dropping thing. But it made for some interesting and not so interesting development in the story, not so much interesting as an original. That's unfortunately a thing that happens in a lot of movies where we just need to drop their temperature down or get them close to death.
Well, and at the same time, thinking at it from a realistic perspective, a lot of people aren't in their right minds when they're in situations such as these, and they're not thinking correctly. So who's to say what we would or would not do in the same situation?
Oh man, the first I think it was I think it was the Polly's idea was just burn the woods in the backyard to attract it, and then of course Seth says, well, we could burn. We don't know how the wind's gonna blow. It might burn back on us. I was like, if you attract the monster in the back, run through the front.
Well, and then like how they light everything on fire and they're like, okay, well, let's run away from the fire instead of like, let's stay here and wait for the fire trucks and have somebody rescue us. Let's like just try and run away.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I hate the logic wise. My thing was, okay, let's burn the back, let it go to the back, let us run to the front.
Exactly.
Even if we don't have a car that works, we run to the front. Although I'm trying to remember why they didn't use the police car.
It didn't have the keys in it.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So learn to hotwire cars, kids. It'll save you.
Especially the horror movie. Oh my God.
But no, I mean, going back to how you were saying it's like a single location, I think that's what like kind of overshadowed this one in the theaters because the year before we had The Mist, which was kind of similar. A bunch of monsters keep people trapped inside a grocery store. So you're in the one location for most of the film. And then there were so many other re-releases in 2008, and we had like Cloverfield and stuff like that that came out that year. Those were the big monster movies compared to this, which is a little tiny indie thing. So I feel like it was overshadowed the year that it came out, as well as the years before and after it.
Yep. Yeah, and honestly, I don't remember if the movie went to the theater or if it was a limited release or what.
I think it was a very small release because the box office was only $510,000.
Okay, so that was that was probably definitely a limited release. I'm a little surprised though, but not surprised. A lot of great horror films get a small limited release. Probably played in New York or LA, and that was probably about it. And then
because it was in a couple of like horror film festivals where it was like it was nominated for a ton of awards, but it never really got wide release compared to some of the other big ones. And I mean, there's even some other indie films that came out in 2008, like Lake Mungo and
that was part of
what is it? And Eden Lake. Like you've got these little tiny indie movies that have exploded since then and have become like renowned and cult classics, whereas this has still stayed very small, surprisingly.
Yeah. I actually like Lake Mungo. I have not seen Eden Lake yet. I just realized
it is very messed up.
It is on my list. It's been on my list for a long time, but sometimes you forget about some of the older films as you're watching a lot of the newer films. But that one's been on my list for a long time. Splinter, I read about in some horror magazine. That's how I got on my radar. I know between Rue Morgue and Fangoria and all the other ones out there. I can't remember where I read about it, but I remember reading about it, and that's why I saw it when it came out on DVD, because that was DVD, and not streaming. So I know I saw it as soon as it came out, but it was one of those films where I just don't remember much about its release. because of how small it probably was. So.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, there was a lot that came out that year. You had Cloverfield near the beginning of the year, which was huge. I mean, the uh marketing for that alone was ridiculous. But then you get the eco horror, The Happening that year too. So people were probably a little over eco horror. You got this
Which is very much what just one could be considered, right?
exactly. And then you got like The Strangers, which was huge that year. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that came out that was really big, and it was either really good or really bad, but it was big either way. I mean, even The Ruins came out that year.
Oh.
So I feel like it probably got overshadowed by some of these bigger films, especially for a single little location.
We're gonna leave those single locations to Frank Darabont. He's really good at them.
I mean, I love single location movies. I mean, The Hateful Eight is one of my favorites.
A horror film in its own way, as graphic as it is.
Yes.
But I also love it. So don't think I don't love that movie. I love that movie as well. Do you have any ideas of why? I want to delve, since we've gone over the plot and everything like that, and we also gone over some of the stuff that, some of the reasons why we think it may not have done as well as it could have. Do you actually think that this is a film in which it deserves to be more recognized because of the monster aspects? I know I keep bringing up monster films in our podcast as a subgenre that doesn't get enough love or credit in the horror genre community as a whole. And this is one of those films where people may have looked at it and said, "Oh, this is just like The Thing. Why am I watching this?"
Right. So like we had the prequel remake of The Thing 2, I want to say kind of near this time as well, maybe a few years after this. But yeah, I mean, looking at it, because we were talking about it the other day, there aren't a ton of like actual monster movies in the 2000s. Like a lot of them are listed, but it's like Constantine. I wouldn't consider that a monster movie. That's an angels, demons movie. But yeah, I mean, as a monster movie from the 2000s, I think it is very well done compared to some of the other ones, especially that have come out. I know the other day we talked about Graveyard Shift as a monster movie. Like this is a lot better than something like that. Whereas that is like a popcorn, have drinks and fun with your friends. This is a disgusting monster movie. Like if you go back to like Humanoids from the Deep, like the original one where you're watching it and you're like, this is gross. Like why am I watching this? But it's good. I mean, like it's not as huge as Cloverfield was with monster movies, but still for such a small cast and all of the practicality of it, it is very impressive.
Yeah, it is impressive. And the thing I really liked about this film is even though there's a huge monster with multiple people, amalgamated together, that what you mostly see as the viewer of the film is the smaller creatures. And they're just as dangerous, if not as more so, than the bigger monster that's waiting for them outside.
Yeah, it's like the scene, like you keep saying, it's like the scene in The Thing where you've got the dog monster, where you are seeing bits and pieces of it in quick little bites. So you never get the full spectrum of what it actually is. So you get these little bits and pieces that are absolutely gross, or you might see it in a quick burst as it bursts across screen or whatever else. But mostly you are not seeing the entire monster, which is what I'm a huge fan of. Like, leave more to the imagination because it's going to be so much worse than what you can show on screen most times.
Unless you're watching, of course, John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, then of course you really want to see the monsters a little bit more.
I know. That is one movie I don't want them to remake, but I want to just to see how messed up they can make it. Like, and even keep the same cast. I would be so excited. Like, give it to Guillermo del Toro.
He may be just sticking to his animated movies, so we'll probably see an animated version if he does.
Well, he is working. He is doing the animated At the Mountains of Madness, which I'm here for because I don't think you could make a realistic looking one that looks good. I think sticking to an animated movie to make it as grotesque as possible would be fantastic.
Oh my god. Well, we'll see how that turns out after we see what he's crafted for his Frankenstein movie. So, which I'm highly. So go. But that being said, are there any other great ideals or things that you have to say about Splinter itself?
I'd say give it a shot. It is one of those monster movies that, like we keep saying, it is very heavily influenced by The Thing. It is really well done with its practical effects. The writing is a little hit or miss, but it is still a fully comprehensible story that you can go along with and watch, and you can cheer for people versus monsters. You'll be questioning some of the decisions they make, but like I said, who knows what you would do in the same situation. But yeah, it is not for the faint of heart when it comes to like body twisting and broken bones. It is quite disgusting.
Yes, it is. And I'm a huge fan of these type of movies. As I've said, I've mentioned both John Carpenter's The Thing and Leviathan, which is another criminally overlooked film. But the thing about Splinter is that besides having a great monster, it's something new and different. The most that we've ever had in a plant-like creature, other than the ruins, actually, now that I think about it, is probably The Happening, which we all kind of want to forget.
And the fact that they all came out in like the same year is really bizarre.
Yeah. And you know the sequence in Creepshow. I mean,
yes,
I can't think of that. It's not done that often, and I'm hoping that doesn't also scare people away, because those type of ecological horror films are very interesting. They're not done that often because obviously they're not really all that successful.
It's hard to pull them off well, whereas like The Ruins definitely had stuff to say. The Bay was phenomenal with the way that they pulled it off. That's one of my favorites. But yeah, if you can pull off eco horror, go for it, because it is the most realistic thing of Mother Earth turning on us to destroy whatever, not necessarily like what was it? What is it? The Day the Earth Stood Still and everything else, where like everybody freezes over or catches on fire, which, I mean, we're there anyways, but like.
Yes, we are there. All right. So as we get to the end of this episode, I would like to rate it on our rating scale of 1 being bad, 5 being great. How would you rate this film?
I would probably rate it as a 3. It's not like the greatest movie I've ever seen. It is not the worst. It is entertaining. It is very well done. If you are into gruesome movies, I would 100% recommend it for you.
So I'm going to go with that too as well, because on this second or the third viewing, this recent viewing, I did not enjoy it as much as I did the very 3 or 4 times I've seen it before, mostly because I realized that there were some plot holes that were just bothering me. But I still think the monster is amazing. I think the performances are good. And I do think it's a movie that's been criminally overlooked. And we don't get enough eco horror. We get a plenty of Bigfoot movies, but I don't really call most of those eco horror.
No.
But eco horror does creep into those type of movies, especially like Larry Fessenden's Wendigo. But with that, I want to thank you, Panazzo, for joining us on Conversations in Horror. Everyone out there who's listening to this podcast, please make sure to check out some of our previous episodes, as we have done some amazing films in the past, and we continue to do amazing episodes into the future. So make sure to like, subscribe, and do all those fun things that you do out there. From all of us at Something Wicked Entertainment, I want to have you guys have a pleasant day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production. Written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers. Executive producer, Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.